Thank you for having me here to talk about what I really believe is the most important issue that we are facing in not just our current lives, but in dealing with the success of our future. As you've probably heard before, data is the world's most valuable asset, a multi-trillion-dollar industry made up of our personal information that feeds into every single decision that is made, both in the public and private sector. Yet somehow, on a technical level, on the level of education, legislation, and regulation, we as the individual producers of the world's most valuable asset don't actually have a lot of rights to this incredibly valuable asset that we produce. We lack in our digital lives trust. The most important part about digital trust is that if we are able to build the infrastructure, the laws, and the digital literacy education that we all deserve, then we can create not just a safe, but an incredibly successful digital world. Now, why am I up here talking to you about this? I actually started my journey in technology in 2007 when I left university to join Senator Barack Obama's first presidential campaign. I was member number 5 or 6 of a very small team called the New Media Team, where we were the group that invented social media strategy. We were the first people to collect data from social media in order to drive participation in democracy. As we collected data and started running targeted communications, we saw for the first time millions of new people registering to vote, getting politically active and involved in issues that were important to themselves and their families. We saw for the first time people coming to the voting booth that had never voted before. And we saw that this data-driven communication strategy was able to increase trust and participation in democracy like nothing we had ever seen before. And so my first exposure to technology was that the more data that we could use, the more positive of a relationship we as individuals could have with our entire society. And so at the time I was studying as a human rights lawyer, and instead of joining the Obama administration, I decided to travel around the world working for different human rights NGOs, United Nations departments, organizations like Amnesty International, and teaching those organizations some of the data-driven strategies that we had developed on the Obama campaign. And again, what I saw is that the more data that we were actually able to employ, the faster you could get new laws passed that protect human rights. The faster you could actually get people to care about some of the most important issues in the world and become active to improve their own communities. So what I really saw as my opportunity in the world was to learn how to use the most advanced data-driven tools for my campaigns. And so while I was studying my PhD and writing my doctoral thesis on something called preventive diplomacy, I was seeking to figure out all of the types of data that existed around the world and how they could be employed in ways that could prevent crisis from ever happening in the first place, to create a safer, more trustworthy, transparent society where we would be able to improve our lives with the data that we created. Now, unfortunately, I decided to join a company part-time while I was doing that called Cambridge Analytica. And I was introduced to the CEO because no one at my law school could teach me about advanced predictive analytics, and I knew that I could never complete my doctoral thesis without having some of these skills. So while I was at this company, I learned how to use what were at the time the most advanced data-driven tools for predictive analytics. But what I also learned was that the concepts that I had learned on the Obama campaign during that time, I had worked with people that existed within their own ethical and moral code. On the Obama campaign, we only did positive campaigns and communications off of the back of data. Nothing was ever negative, nothing was ever seeking to drive division. And what I found out was that not everyone plays by those same rules. And that without large-scale data protection law and regulation, without the technology or even the digital literacy education to protect people, that data could be abused in ways that I never thought possible. So in March 2018, I became a whistleblower, not just on my former employers and Facebook, but on the entire data industry and the way that it was constructed. What I learned was that the amount of data that we produce and that is available about us is so vast that we need to make sure that we are building systems that increase digital trust in a variety of ways to make sure that we as individuals have the rights that we deserve so that we as a society can be more successful together. So what do we mean when we say digital trust? What we mean, firstly, is that we deserve transparency. The way that legacy technology systems have been built is that every time we touch technology, our data is being taken away from us. It's built as inherently extractive, to take as much value away from us as individuals as possible and collate that at the top of the world's largest technology companies, which are worth hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. Now, what we want is to at least understand what data is being collected about us. I'm sure most people listening to this who spend their daily lives talking about data have probably not even read the terms and conditions of the apps that they use on their phone every day. Maybe I could get a show of hands of people who actually do that. So this lack of transparency is such a big problem. We need to know what is being collected about us and have the right to opt out. So besides that transparency, we need to have permission structures and consent mechanisms that allow us, for instance, to say, I'd be happy to share my data with healthcare researchers in order to make sure that we can prevent or solve some of the biggest problems with diseases and healthcare, which obviously has plagued our lives over the past year and a half. I would like to say I can become a data input into my local smart cities infrastructure so that I can help stop and make sure there are not the next traffic accidents. I would like to be able to share my data with educational institutions to make sure that we can all become smarter and better as a community. But perhaps I don't want to share my data with political parties, right? And so that should be my choice. We should have those options. And over the past 4 years since becoming a whistleblower, I've spent most of my time working with legislators and regulators on data protection legislation to make sure that our laws are technically enforceable. I started the Own Your Data Foundation in order to increase access to digital literacy education, to make sure that everyone can understand what their data rights are, basic cybersecurity protocols, so that we can have a more media literate population, so we can spot fake news and disinformation and be able to stop hacking and phishing attempts, so that we can increase digital empathy, especially on social media, and of course take care of our mental and physical health with screen time management. And then the most important part of all of this to me, in the end, is the technology infrastructure that we are actually building together and using every single day. We have the ability to create a system where, with that transparency and consent, that all of us can be incentivized to add our data, to become data inputs into solving a lot of the world's greatest problems. And that's really why I'm here, because I believe that together we can use this technology infrastructure to not just create a safe, but an incredibly successful digital future. So thank you all for having me here. Thank you.